I don't put myself in a position of experiencing that because I really do vet the projects that I agree to. I don't mean that to sound overly confident, but I speak up when I want to speak up, because if I don't speak up, then why am I even there? If without my voice, I have nothing.
Unconsciously, often, it's written in, I enter the scene carrying laundry.
Right.
Or I am the one shopping. And I often say, if it's not pivotal to the subject matter or the story, give me an iPad.
Yeah.
Give me a book, give me something else. And I think there's small things, but in the larger messaging of what gets gotten, it's so different.
Right. And why aren't men offered laundry to enter?
Yes.
Well, Anthony is very good at taking laundry. We call them lady chores. I'm like, Anthony, would you like to pick up the lady chore?
I've had the same scenario. It's where, you know, the two of them are doing dishes, you know, and I just think to myself, no, why don't we have my husband, why don't I be outside smoking the joint, right? Like, how, that's so far more interesting to watch, to see the
And it makes you a more
mom and the
interesting
daughter.
character.
Doesn't it, though?
Doesn't it, right? Like, let's like, it's really simple. It doesn't change the dynamic of the scene, but it's really interesting for the audience to see, like, wow, the guys are sitting there doing dishes and washing the dishes, and I'm out there smoking a joint with my mom.
And
like,
a lot
wow,
of it
that's
will be,
awesome.
might even be subliminal.
I
Nobody
totally-
will notice, but they will notice.
Yeah.
And I also don't think people make those choices. I don't think the writers are up there going, let's give her a lady chore.
No.
It's not. It's not some diabolical plan.
No, but it's like,
so unconscious.
But we're all in the hamster wheel of thinking
It's
that
just
way.
the rote thing that you've seen it a million times on TV and you're going to do it again.
Absolutely.
I was raised to have a voice and to use my voice and to speak up. That is not always comfortable. That is not always easy. It is often scary, but I can't help it. I don't have to speak up about everything, but I'm not afraid to say, I'm sorry, wait, why am I doing that? I think we are really in an exciting time on television for women. First of all, I think television is exciting right now. There's so much television to watch. There's so many different ways to watch television. And there are some amazing stories being told through the eyes of women, where the women are not just talking about the men that they're with.
You know, I think the studio system is, we've all worked within the studio system, it seems like the female characters are much more formulaic there, you know. But I would definitely say that it is exciting in television, because the roles that I think we're all a part of are characters that are like complicated, flawed women that actually represent myself and real women in my life, you know.
But I love trying to think about whether or not it was chicken or the egg, because I feel like the consumer, always with everything, I always go back to, like, the consumer has the choice. They vote with their dollars, it's always up to them. And is it because there have been greater examples that have been higher in number over the last 10, 12, 15, 20 years of complicated multidimensional women, or is it because we as a culture have started demanding that, you know, like who's influencing who?
Like in the case of Sex and the City, it was that actually women weren't sitting around, you know, pining to get married, and that was the be-all and end-all of their existence. Now, Sex and the City didn't create that. That was what was happening, but we showed it, and all of a sudden people flocked to it because they were like, yes.
It was the chicken.
The
not
same
the
with
egg.
Cosby. It's like we had tons of middle-class African-American families, but we had never seen them on TV, really, so that when it was like, oh yes, television, almost more than any other art form, because it can be so domestic and so personal, it really catches us up.
Well, it's also so personal, unlike movies where you're seeing people and stories told on this big screen when you go into a dark room. Television is in your home, you eat with people, you, like, there's such an intimate relationship that happens with television. It's like week after week you gain this invested interest in these people that are in your living room or in your bedroom or wherever it is every week. And there's a different opportunity for how to dive in.
It does make you feel more responsible as an entertainer or an artist or whatever to prioritize fighting every single stereotype that's out there, or to truthfully find things that haven't been done before, like you were saying, like everyone who made Sex and the City, like pushing that forward when it hadn't really been done before, but then finding this huge audience waiting for it.
Right, because television has, television, if we talk about it as an entity, it has all these things like, oh, you can't do that, no one's going to watch that, but as soon as someone does, and people do, then everybody tries to replicate
But that goes back to the consumer thing, because like Cosby came out of nowhere, right? The consumer didn't ask for that.
Well, it also had an enormous star at its helm.
Of course, but I mean, when they pitch that idea, or Blackish, or whatever that is, when that comes forward, when that show comes forward, it's not being, sure, it's being asked for because there's a gap. But it requires somebody having the courage to, or the wherewithal to say, there's a gap here and this is a story that needs to be told.
That's what I mean. You feel a lot of personal responsibility to say like, wow, I'm in this industry and I identify as an artist. I should not be complacent in any of these stereotypes. I should be finding those gaps, and not just for the sake of it being a gap or a business, but the whole point is to be reaching people and to be,
humanizing these characters.
Exactly.
Making them
Sharing.
And to be
relatable.
reflecting people back to themselves.
Exactly.
I recently turned down a role. It was a character in which she had been tortured for the majority of the film. And then in the last 5 pages, she sort of takes her power back and she gets revenge. And I said, okay, well, I understand, that's, she's very empowered at the end. But I felt very uncomfortable with perpetuating that idea for people to see. I can sell it with all my might. I can make it believable. And there's almost something very scary in that you can kind of delve into that creatively, take yourself there. But as a result of that, I felt a great responsibility of what I was projecting.
Well, it's stereotyping women in the role of the victim.
Well, and it pulls on heartstrings because nobody wants to imagine those scenarios for your daughters or your wives or whatever. I understand it. I feel as though we're kind of moving away from that, and I feel a real personal responsibility sending a different and empowered message out there.
How does this new exciting stuff get past the radar?
Yeah.
Well, we have to be careful of like, well, this is what works on television, or this is what we've always done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, you have to have an eye to what people are going to want to watch, but we shouldn't just go to the default setting of this is how we do it.
Yeah.
Right?
The way we as women are taught in our culture is to see ourselves through other people's eyes. So often our stories are told by us talking about the man we're gonna get, which is one of the reasons Sex and the City was so revolutionary, because it was like all of a sudden women could not be having the goal, like could be choosing the sex that they wanted to have when they wanted to have it, like all that kind of thing, which was like just crazy.
And a lot of what you see on television is artificial, particularly in the 3-camera whatever.
Yeah.
But so much of the time, what really succeeds is the realer it is, and it can be dressed up in a lot of different ways, and that's one of the Sex and the City things, right? Every plot line that happened literally happened to someone in the writer's room or happened to someone they directly knew.
Yeah.
And so even though some of them were fantastical and absurd, but they all
It was based
happened.
in a real thing.
Yeah. And that's the thing, you can dress it up and you can put it, but if it's got the core of truth, people are excited to see it because they recognize it.
And they don't even know why it feels different, but it does feel different.
Right, it feels authentic.
Yeah. And it also makes me think of how, like, responsibility as an artist. Like, I know you're just supposed to follow your creative juices and stuff, but I do think that because you having the ability to influence other people by telling them stories, it's a huge responsibility. And to make
When you have such a wide audience.
Yeah, to make those subtle changes, it has a big impact.
As a person of color, or as a Black woman, I will just say in my life, I've always been aware of the choices that I make and how it reflects on others. That's sort of a part of it, and this idea of having to do better to be equal. But I, as an artist, I think I constantly am always saying to myself, not am I doing the right thing, but am I telling the truth?
True thing, right? You don't want to airbrush it and make it
and the right
better
and
than
wrong,
it is.
that gets real dicey too. Like when you start doing the what's the right way to do something. And I think that's what you were saying, like around sort of telling an authentic
Yeah, and and didn't even mean right as
No, I don't
right
think
versus
that's what you
wrong,
said.
but right as in the truthful thing.
Yes.
Because there are those tiny choices that we can be responsible for bringing up that would have a huge impact, and that I feel like all artists need to think about, because you lose a little bit of your gusto complaining about issues if you're not using every bit of critical thinking you have and analyzing the work you're doing, that you're writing, that you're participating in, and saying, is this what I want to say? Is this promoting authentic ideas?
For actresses above a certain age, yes, there are roles for you on television, but are they meaty and are they three-dimensional? And certainly, are they at the center? I mean, you have somebody like Helen Mirren on Prime Suspect, but that's very much the exception rather than the rule. There should be more. Let's put it that way. There should be more.
Well, if my philosophy holds, then we're only going to get better,
There you go.
smarter, deeper, funnier, have more to share,
And
better looking.
that'll happen on TV before it happens in movies.
Agreed.
I think it always does. Movies tend to be a lot more formulaic. They have to have a structure. It's just so much more formulaic, and it's just a laid out system. But on television now, there are an incredible amount of experiments happening. And that's what's really cool to watch unfold. You have a miniseries, you have a 6-part whatever, you can have 13 episodes, you can have 22 episodes, they're really experimenting with everything now. And that just, you can also spend a lot more time with characters. And I think that's why you see women more multidimensional on television, and you see them more complex, and because you're watching them unfold in front of you in a longer period of time, and just the logistics of it, you're spending more time with them, and they're not having to serve the part of woman in the film.
And I think that there's another thing that we have on TV, which is you can have somebody who's such a big deal that she wants to do a show on TV. Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin want to do a show. They will find a show for them. And then there's an audience will flood in because for people who are in that demographic, like, wow,
Or
a
not
show
in that
about
demographic, by the
or
way.
not in that
Yeah.
demographic, but people who are so starved to see,
See themselves on
To be
television and see
represented.
their
Yeah,
stories.
I turned 50 this year.
Well,
and
I want to be you.
thank you. You will be.
Okay,
You
I'm
will be.
ready.
But I have to say, I mean, I know I'm lucky and all that. I'm in a good position, but I feel like in the last very few years, the roles that I have been given have been so much more interesting. And it's because, I'm like out of my fertile period, and so many of the roles that we are offered that come our way when we're between 25 and 45 have to do with being someone's mother. Being someone's wife, yes, but being someone's mother. And being someone's mother, up close is really wonderful, but it's frankly not that interesting.
Yeah.
And particularly dramatically,
Yeah, come to
if
my
you're
house.
watching someone
Yeah.
on a screen, it's not that interesting. It's sort of mind-numbing,
Yeah,
at times. And so I feel like it is really interesting for me, that when the way that the people who are casting me see me, now that I'm out of that space, even though I have a 5-year-old at home and I'm not actually out of that space at all, but to their eye, I am, all of a sudden, the roles I play are allowed to be much more interesting, and they're allowed to be like malevolent and complicated in a way that it's like, if I'm still in the mommy area, it's really important that I'm basically benevolent.
Yeah, because
Because
doing that at
it's
home
these-
and at work is
these-
exhausting.
Well, because
part
it's
in. I mean,
terrifying
you've got
that
also-
that moms might not be like totally great.
And
Yeah.
likable. That makes me want
Yeah.
to cry. That's stunning
Yeah.
and really helpful
hopeful
for me
and
personally.
very
Yes,
hopeful.
Very, very.